They get a little spastic. Hello. Today I am here with Emily, and we are going to be talking about networking, which is like my jam. This is what I talk about all the time with female entrepreneurs. Girl, we got to get on the phone with strangers. So I'm so excited. This is going to be so much fun. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Sabrina Victoria. I am the host here at her talk show. If you have not already subscribed, girl, get on that subscribe button. What are you doing? These podcasts are guaranteed to have you thinking differently about life and business. Let's jump right in.
Get ready, because today's guest is about to change the way you view your world. This is Her Talk Show, hosted by Sabrina Victoria.
You know how sometimes a basketball player, before they do the 3-point, they like bounce the ball a certain amount of times each time. I don't know
Yeah.
this, but like they'll bounce it twice or 3 or like 6 times, and they always do the same, or else they'll like miss. Like they have to do it. I'm that way between this and the video. I have to take a drink. If I don't take a drink, I'm like, I just can't even. It's the weirdest thing. But it's this weird because that song is only like 3 seconds or something. So I'm always like, I'm gonna choke. Like one of these days, I'm just gonna choke.
It's like it's
And
the
then I'm
wrong
thinking
tube.
to myself, Sabrina, stop telling yourself you're gonna choke, because then you're actually gonna
Yeah.
choke. It's this whole thing, everything.
Well, I think about like Maria Sharapova, if you've ever seen her play. I feel like when she plays tennis, she always does like the same bounces. And I think she like does something with her ear. Like she does like a wipe, the whole little ritual. So I like that you built like a sports ritual into your podcast, basically.
Yes. So I was gulping down some water as that thing was ending. Listen, those of you that are already jumping on live, thank you so much for being here. We are going to have some fun talking about networking. If you're watching on the replay, make sure you hashtag replay and drop that in the comments so we can say hello. We've had over 500 women on this podcast.
That's insane.
So super excited about that, and excited about adding another one to the list. We have Emily here. She is the founder and business coach at 6 Degrees Society, which just sounds fucking cool. Co-founder of Ready, Set, Coach and podcast host of the 6 Degree and Ready, Set, Coach podcast. She's also lovingly called 20 Questions by those that know her. And to those that come to know her, they'll quickly understand why. Is that because you ask a bunch of questions?
I am so annoying with my question asking. Yes.
Girl, I do that too. Okay, tell me why you do it. Why do you ask so many questions?
I love figuring people out and being able to understand like where we click and how we click. So for you, Sabrina, being in Boca, I was born in Florida. So I'm like, where in Boca? Did you go to this high school? Do you know this person? And the more commonalities I can find out, the quicker my brain is kind of like assessing our relationship, our closeness level, and your story. I don't know if I kind of feel like it's like a sickness. I love learning about people, and I love getting to like understand what makes them tick and why they are the way that they are. And I'll just say my husband's Canadian, and so I always play the like, where are you from game, or like what high school or what college or where did you go? So I can play the who's in common. He's like, you are so American. That is not something that people do in other parts of the world. So I don't know if that's true or not.
That's so funny. When my fiance and I first got together, he would get so annoyed with me because I would ask questions to people when I already knew the answer.
Like
And
what?
he'd say afterwards, he'd be like, why are you asking me? Like business questions usually.
Okay.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm fully immersed
Like,
in
how do
business.
you do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he'd be like, why are you like, he's like, in defense, he's like, you make yourself not look as smart because you look like you're like, you don't know what you're doing. And I was like, people know how to do things differently though in the way that I do them. So like, I even did that with you here.
Yeah, you did.
What are you using? Like, I'm already using something. I'm already like fully invested in for those that don't, well, no one knows. I asked her right off the bat, as soon as we jumped on here, just like straight up. I'm just like, hey, what do you use for your CRM? Didn't even open with anything. I'm just like, what do you use for your CRM? Because I'm having some issues with mine. But for me, it's like everyone knows something.
Yeah.
And you, Emily, know things that I don't know. So the only way for me to like learn more is to ask questions, even if I think I already know the answer, because think people do things differently
Mhm.
and know different things than what I know. So if I can tweak, pivot, refocus in a different way to make my life or my business run more smoothly, then like tell me all the things.
I think that's such a great point too, and we do it within our peers. We do it, where do you buy your groceries, or where do you find the best cheeses in all of the shops? And we ask these questions of people. We crowdsource information and then you catalog it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to take advantage of that answer, or that answer might not apply in that moment, but now you have it cataloged when someone asks you, where do I find the best cheese in Denver? You're like, do you know where you should go? You are then information sharing and gathering from past conversations that have been had. And I think it's such a cool thing that we as humans, and specifically women, do. And I'll also ask you, Sabrina, do you ever have those moments where you just want to share something with people? You're like, I'm obsessed
Yeah.
with what StreamYard or whatnot. You're like, I don't know why I have to just tell people. I just need to tell them. And now I'm done.
Yes, 100% in several different areas. But I'm actually, and I don't know if this is good or bad, but I'm actually getting better at that as far as, not that I was bad at it, but one of the things that I notice other people do, right? So this is probably me projecting more than anything else, is somebody will tell a story
Mm.
or give some knowledge. And then somebody else, I feel as if, has to one up it a little bit. And I'm like, why couldn't you just let that person just sit in the glory of knowing something
Mhm.
without and sharing it without having to, and that's probably my own problem, right? Like I'm probably like totally projecting, but because of me seeing that so often, I now have actually reserved myself a lot. And even if I have a joining story or a better than story or whatever, I just allow that person to have their story.
I think that's a gift to be able to let it just be, because there's that little ache in all of us that wants to say that the piece or share. Um, and yet, I think that what you're just saying is a great example of active listening, where
Yeah.
so many people are more active competing than active listening.
Yes, yes. I run a mastermind and I see that sometimes with that where somebody will give advice and then the woman will be like, "Oh, I already do that. I already know all of that." And I feel like that kind of cuts the brainstorming for other people because then they're kind of like, "Well, if she already knows that, then she obviously already knows this, but she might not." Versus just being
Yeah.
open and vulnerable to like whatever you want to give to me, I am willing to take. And I don't have to give my 2 cents on whether or not I know the things or not. Um, I think that's helped me in my business.
And I think that's a good manner too, of interesting learning. I'm curious for the person that feels really defensive and says the thing if they're newer in their business. Because when I was newer in my business and people would give me advice, I'd be like, I've done that. I'm fine. I'm good. Where now I'm like, pour it on. I know nothing. I've had this for 7 years. I have no idea what I am doing. Please
Yes.
share all expertise and advice, even if I've heard it before.
Totally, totally. So this goes right along with the topic that you're talking about today, networking. And I love how you put the word habit with it.
Mhm. Yes.
Girl, that's key.
Yes. Well, do you go to the gym once and get results typically? Not usually. I'm
No.
usually sore afterwards. The first time I go to the gym, it hurts and it's humbling. And I think the same can be said with networking. It can hurt and it can be really humbling, but it also is such a cool place to learn. It's like going to class every single day, but that class is filled with life and lived experience. And so
Yeah.
when it's treated more like a habit, it feels as regular as brushing your teeth versus something that you dread doing, like going to the doctor or getting a root canal.
100%. So before we dive into all the wonders, I want to ask first question. Who should be networking? Is this like a human thing or is this only for entrepreneur business people? What's your
Oh,
thoughts on that?
I think it's a human thing. And it's funny you say that because when I first started my business, I had girlfriends that are teachers or girlfriends that work in corporate and are very happy with their job and who flat out told me, Emily, I don't need to network. I'm a teacher. This does not apply to me, and then come back a few years later where they maybe decided to start a business or they're moving cities and they wanted to make new friends, or they have kids and they're looking to get into a school and they need to be connected to the other people at said school. And it just made me laugh. And I luckily didn't laugh in their faces, but there were moments that I wanted to where I'm like, dude, this is networking. This is connecting. It's not about just advancing in your career, it's advancing in your life and growing self-development, personal development in your life. So oftentimes, to long-windedly answer your question, I think that everyone from a retired grandma to your little kid is networking, and every moment can be a networking moment. We just have to take like the slime off of the word networking,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it does have kind of a bad why is that?
I think we automatically take networking like used car salesmen and like anyone who is called a telemarketer, and we somehow jumbled them together, and we assumed that networking means that you're out to get something, and that's bad.
Yeah.
Why? I don't know, but I think that networking is not necessarily this transaction that people assume it is. They think that if I'm networking, then I'm gonna have to convince you that to invest in me or to hire me or to buy whatever product I'm hawking. When in reality, like, we're investing in each other and we're learning from each other and we're giving each other little tidbits of knowledge back and forth, and maybe down the line I do join your mastermind or you join my podcast and so
Mm.
on and so forth. It doesn't have to be an in the moment transaction.
Yeah, definitely. As you well, when did you realize this, by the way? Like,
That I was a networking savant, or that
or that it was necessary? Like, there was a definitive
Mhm.
arena where I sat down and I was like, "Oh, this is working and this is networking,
Yeah.
and I need to do more, like, double, triple down on this." When did that happen for you?
For me, so I graduated college in 2009, right into the recession. So it was a great time to graduate. And I knew that I didn't want to just like, go and take the first job that I had. And I had saved up some money and decided to move to a country where I knew absolutely nobody. And I was a Spanish and communications double major, which means I could communicate in Spanish. I honestly don't really know what I took away from it, except I wanted to continue pursuing Spanish and like living in a Spanish culture. And I had done my study abroad in Madrid, and people had told me about Argentina. And they're like, it's so European and so cheap, and you would love living there. So when all my girlfriends are getting these jobs at consulting companies, and their other ones are getting their PhDs or going to med school, and like they all had tracks, and I was the lone friend who had no track in front of them. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life. I still am making it up day by day. And I remember being like, okay, cool. I'm going to go to Argentina and I'm going to just say it out loud and see what happens. And so I said it out loud. And what happened as a reaction, people would be like, oh my God, you need to meet my cousin. She lives in Argentina. And then the introduction would happen. And then, oh, you need to meet this person. He's lived in Argentina, or blah, 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 blah. So I started following up on all these leads, and these doors started unlocking for me. And when I got down to Argentina, I was able to meet all these extraordinary people that invited me into their homes or invited me into their friend group and community. And then when I was down there, I continued kind of just following the paths of these connections, being like, I want to learn more about wine. Do you know how I could do that? And they're like, you should meet this person. And so essentially it was like this magic 8 ball. Once you asked for something to enough people, a lot of people had the answer and were able to guide you to find that path. So for me, it
Mhm.
was at 21 years old, just asking and following the thread.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. When you when you are around, networking or on calls or in person or Zoom or whatever you're
Mhm.
doing, what do you find is the consensus on networking as far as a lot of people don't do it?
Mhm.
A lot of people are scared.
Mhm.
What do you see when you're out and about as far as why people don't do it, or what are your thoughts on that, or clients? What are you finding?
I think that the people who show up to a networking event are opting in. And I think the ones that opt in more regularly yield more results and more success in their personal and professional life. I think it's the people that show up when they need something that it really backfires for them because they smell a bit more like desperation. And we know the smell. We've been around people with that smell. So one of my favorite things to tell people is build your network when you're not looking for something, and then you can tap it when you are. And so that opposition to networking, I think it's honestly fear of rejection. Like, what if I tell you about my business, Sabrina, and you tell me it's stupid? Or what if you tell me that I'm never going to make money or I'm never going to be successful? So sometimes I think that people are terrified of essentially approaching a mirror, and the mirror happens to be within this group of strangers. The other thing I hear a lot is introverts being like,
Mm,
"Oh, I I'm introverted. I don't like meeting people."
yeah.
I'm a Gemini, I'm a projector, I'm extroverted. I freaking love meeting people, but I also am very much need to like take care of self before I meet people, or I won't be the best version of who I am. And I think introverts can make really incredible networkers if they give themselves the opportunity and that they give themselves the setup and preparation to do so. And I'll say the last thing too is oftentimes networking, it feels like a spray and pray where you're handing out your business card to everyone and you're hoping that like I land on the right person and one of them is the jackpot to my future of whatever that means. When in reality it's I like to kind of set a mental timer for myself for each person I meet. Like let's give this person about 9 minutes and really make a strong connection, make a follow-up plan so then I can be in that moment with you versus like, "Hey, Sabrina, oh, you're at HerNation.life. Ooh, what's that do? No, that's not going to care for me," and then move on. But really be generous and present with my time and energy, and it goes a lot farther, even if we have nothing to do with one another.
Absolutely. That
Right?
that, like, genuine connection.
Yeah. And remembering those little things about people too, where sure, maybe we never do business together, but I know someone who would be an amazing person for your mastermind. Essentially, you're building these like little it's funny, the thing that came to my mind was like the COVID spike with the like the little spikes, but it's like you're the nucleus and then all of these little spikes that are going and doing your work out in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I call it a megaphone.
I
You're,
like that.
like, creating a bigger and bigger megaphone, the more people that you talk to. So instead of just you having just one,
Mhm.
when you tell another person, now there's 2. When you
Yeah.
tell another person, now there's 3. So you're not only a megaphone for others, they are also a megaphone for you. And I a lot of times feel as if the genuine connections that we're making is what's really helping catapult our businesses.
Right? And I think there's that aspect of you want people talking about you when you leave the room,
Mm,
and you want them to be able to represent the right side of things like, "Oh, Sabrina, oh, you should go to her because of X, Y, and Z." Or
yeah,
you should go to her a good entry level to go to her is to watch her talk show if
yeah,
you aren't quite ready to have a one-on-one with her. And so
yeah.
letting people be those, ambassadors of sorts or those missionaries for whatever you're selling in the world. And it's funny for me, a lot of people will come to me. I'll get like I have a ton of text messages I have yet to respond to, but it'll be like, this person just moved to this city and you're in this city, or you have a 6 degrees chapter in this city. Can you plug her in? And like I'm known as the plugger inner. of helping people feel at home in that new place that they live.
Absolutely beautiful. You mentioned, not trying to put words in your mouth, but it rung a bell in me as far as what is talked about on the call, making sure people know you, something to that context, like making sure people know exactly what you do so that when they're going off, they
Mhm.
can then tell people eloquently what you specifically do without confusing people. And I'm sure at this point in your career, or in your journey,
Mhm.
that you have talked to your share of amazing networkers and not so amazing networkers. So I would love to hear, first of all, if you have any funny stories,
Oh, yeah.
but I would love to hear, what should we like? What are the 2 or 3 or whatever things that we should be always mentioning in every networking interaction, online or in person?
Well, yes, I have a lot of stories over the years, a lot of very fun people and memorable people, and some that I'm never hope to meet again. I think that the biggest mistake I see people making with networking is that they're talking about themselves the whole time. When really, and even for me being on a podcast, it's hard for me to be asked questions because I'm so used to asking the questions. And I think that in a networking scenario, you want to make sure that the person feels really special, that they feel like they've been heard, that they feel understood. But I've learned this by being very generous over years too. I would many times miss a moment to fly my own flag. So while it's important for the other person to feel special, and I like to usually control the conversation, don't forget to also let people know what you do.
Mm.
And you can offer to help and you can do all the things, but make sure there is a moment that to allow space for that person to then be like, "How about you? How can I help you?" And have a flag to fly because so often receiving help, I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, Sabrina, but that feeling of being like, "I'm good. I don't know. I don't need anything. I'm fine." But being really clear and being like, "I'm looking for a new CRM system. So if you see one that you love, can you send it to me? Or you mentioned you have a discount code to it. Can you pass it along?" So then the last thing that I think is the biggest break with networking that people lose the momentum or can drop the ball is the follow-up. And oftentimes we'll walk away with a stack of cards and you're like, "Ooh, which one was the one with this card and who is this one?" So I went to one BNI years ago and they asked for 100 business cards and I was like, "I'm poor and I am literally giving you like $1.50 moo cards and I don't wanna ever do this again." So I refused to print business cards at that point. So moving forward, I created something that was more tangible and more, like, usable. So I created pop sockets for people with my brand name, and it's been so fun to get stories from people being like, "I'm sitting next to someone with your pop socket. This is crazy." And they're able to make that connection that they're part of the same community. I would also say I use my phone to make follow-ups. So I'll open the email app and be like, "Sabrina, I love chatting with you about CRM systems. I'm going to send you a bunch of them tomorrow. I already sent an email to you to remind us or with my calendar link so we can hop on a call and we can do the CRM dirty work at your leisure." So I do the follow-up in real time in front of the person. So it's now that ball is in their court to book that time on your calendar or to continue the relationship. The second thing that I do is I love having like a free offer of some sort that's really easy for someone to opt in. And I feel like you probably have something similar, but for me, I host online and in-person events. And so I'll usually send a link to join an event and a free VIP code so they can come and they can experience it. And what they don't know or what happens on my end is once they join an event, they're then added to a mailing list and they're part of my ecosystem and they continue hearing from me. And I also get to experience what I do.
Beautiful. I love all of that, and I love the pop socket idea, and I totally get that with there's like this weird middle ground of like and I don't know where you are as far as like being an influencer of any sort. And not that I'm trying to like say that I'm an influencer, but there's this weird hump that happens when you first start networking. Like I've been in this arena. I've been a life coach for 10 years, but I've been in like heavy networking for
Yeah.
only 2.5 years.
Wow.
And so I'm like hitting that cusp where like people know my name, and it's like weird. Like people, like,
Yeah.
oh, or her nation or this or that, and it'll come back to me and I'm like, how? Because I still feel like just me. Like
Yeah.
I don't feel, but it starts to take this ripple
Yep.
of like vibration of what you're saying, where somebody just random is sitting next to somebody and has your pop socket, and the
Tech.
degree of separation is
Yep.
like
It's
3 to 5
closer.
people or whatever. It's crazy. That's gotta feel so good.
It's so to your point, it's very humbling. It's those
Yeah,
moments are humbling, and it also is a great reminder for everyone that the world is pretty small. So it's it's small in being hired, it's small in doing business, so be someone that people like doing business with,
totally.
and be memorable for that, and be memorable for good versus you don't want to run into someone and be like, "She was a disaster," or "She sucked to do business with," or "I didn't like X, Y, and Z." You want your reputation to precede you positively.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. Do you, in your world, do you do only in-person networking, or do you do both?
So we've started off exclusively in person. I a little origin story is I was working in, as you can tell, as I'm so dressed up today, I was working in high luxury fashion and doing special events and marketing for them. And I was sitting in front of the computer one day planning an event in a store across the country and was like, my brain is atrophying. My brain is literally melting right now. I feel like there's no substance to me. I feel like I'm making rich people buy expensive clothes. And yet, my LinkedIn messages, people are like, "Oh my God, you have my dream job. I will literally kill you for your job. This is amazing." And I felt like such a fraud. I felt so unsatisfied in my work, yet I had no clear sign of what I wanted to do next. And I felt like people who made transitions always got an MBA or got a master's. And I had no desire to go back to school because I had no clue what I wanted to do on the other side of that pedigree or whatnot. And I was looking at what was it called? General assembly classes. I was like, should I be a coder? Should I learn how to do tech? Like I had no idea. I was just throwing spaghetti and seeing anything that stuck. And so I was talking with my work wife at the time, and I was telling her this like conundrum I was feeling and feeling. So we decided I emailed all of my friends that I'd collected over the years. And I've always been a people collector. Like I moved 3 times when I lived in Florida, 3 different schools, and I've kept in touch with probably 87% of the people. Went to college in the Midwest. I lived in the Northeast, and I had like a little Rolodex at a young age from summer camp. And I emailed all these badass humans that I'd connected with, specifically women. And I basically said to them, I was like, do you ever wonder what a day in the life looks like of your friends? Because at the end of the day, when we come together, we usually complain about our jobs versus actually action actionably teaching something about our jobs to each other. So long story long, essentially this idea was that we'd all come together and we'd learn something from one another. And I had 45 people that said yes to this idea. And I thought it would be in my New York City 600 square foot apartment, and we'd like pass a bottle of wine to say our piece. And then I realized I would be so bored if I heard 45 people's like spiel. And how do I consolidate that and make this more actionable and intentional for everyone? So the night before, I had put together everyone's bios of I did their bios, pictures, job titles, companies, and emails of each person. And then I decided to pre-match each person to who I thought the best intentioned individuals would be in the room. So they met 4 people for 15 minutes each. And at the end of this event, people were asking me when my next event was. And this was not supposed to be a company. This was just this, again, this itch to like figure out what I want to do with my life. And through the pushing and the pursuing of a lot of the attendees, I did another and I did another. And I kept wondering, like, what am I going to do with my life? I'm meeting all these awesome people. I wish I had something awesome. And it took my community to literally pin me down and be like, hey, dum dum, this is your business. Like, this is the thing that you need to do. So I took this thing that I had created in New York City and I left my corporate job on like a dream, essentially, and decided to expand it to multiple cities across the country. I grew it from New York to 10 markets where I identified ambassadors in other markets, and we hosted multiple monthly events. And we had speakers and programming and sponsors and cool venues. And then the pandemic happened and everything went virtual. And it was like the best and worst thing that ever happened to me. It was the worst because it was super humbling. It was the best because I had built all these networks and now they were able to connect. So New York was able to meet LA. LA was able to meet SF. And so very long answer to your question is yes, we do events both in person and virtually and continue to host virtually because I never even considered it as a venue until the pandemic forced me to.
Wow. What a great story.
Yeah. Basically the accidental backflipped entrepreneur who knew she wanted to be an entrepreneur, but was forced to be an entrepreneur by the people around me.
Very, very cool. Do you have any advice for the aesthetics of a virtual screen?
Yes. I think that keep it simple, stupid is one of my biggest mottos. And while a virtual, this is amazing, by the way. I feel like I'm on CNN at an this is so cool. But I think a lot of times people can prevent themselves from starting by making it be as perfect as possible. When in reality, like I've been using Zoom in breakout rooms since the beginning of 2020. And I don't think I'll change it anytime soon. So yes, it can be aesthetically pleasing, but I think that learning how to engage virtually is a really important tool versus like I send rules out before my events, set camera on, be active, be engaged, be present, but I don't make it prettier beyond that.
Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. For those that are, as we're wrapping up here, for those that are having trouble networking, what's a few pieces of advice?
Practice every day. And I mean that in going to your workout. If you go to a workout class, can you strike up a conversation with the person next to you or make a plan with someone that's a stranger? I also think look for connective cues of connectivity. I'm wearing literally like a sweatshirt of my college. So if I saw someone that also went to college in Ohio, I probably would be like, hey, you went to school in Ohio too. So use what's already in front of you. Don't try to reinvent the wheel. If it's easier than you think, if you have a dog or a kid, they make great connection tools. You think about your neighborhood dogs, probably know all of their names. Maybe go ahead and ask the owner's name too, or coordinate a dog play date. So again, networking doesn't have to have a desired outcome. It can just be once put in motion, let it stay in motion.
Beautiful. That's funny with the dog thing. I have a friend that just got a dog 4 or 5 months ago, and she said she's met more neighbors since getting a dog than the years she has been living. She's like, I know so many people now because of the dog.
It's great for dating too.
Yeah, good point. That's interesting.
My husband said that all of his ex-girlfriends were from the dog park.
That is so funny.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Rufus, never know.
Well, this has been an absolute delight. Thank you so much, Emily, for being here. For those watching live, thank you. For those watching on the replay, thank you. Emily, as we wrap up here, we obviously have a ton of people that are hanging out. They're resonating with all the goodness that you're sharing. Can you do me a huge favor? Can you share exactly what you do? Obviously, we're having a really good idea of what you do. can you share exactly what you do and who should be reaching out to you? Who should actually be connecting with you and reaching out to you so that they can gain more goodness within their business?
Yeah. So, guys, I run and operate a women's focused networking organization, which means that we handpick who you meet while networking. So, at every event, you get everyone's bios, pictures, job titles, companies, and emails, and we pre match who you meet. So, there's no awkward connections that happen. And you get to reach out to all the individuals that are in attendance after the fact. The best place to reach me is at 6 Degrees Society, all spelled out.com, or follow on Instagram, 6_degrees_society. And come, it's great we're women's focused. Most of our programming is focused on women's issues, but we support men too. I love a good man ambassador, and it's intended for people who are entrepreneurial curious, who want to continue growing personally, professionally, and in their lifestyle.
Entrepreneurial curious.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean?
People who have like an entrepreneurial spirit. So it could be, we have some super successful corporate individuals that have a side hustle. We have people that are in their first year of entrepreneurship, and then we have people who are in their 10th year of entrepreneurship. So that spirit of entrepreneurship is really important to show up and be the best version of self.
Very, very cool. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, Emily, for all of the goodness. For those of you hanging out, if you resonated with all this goodness, make sure you reach out to Emily on social media. Her website, as she said, is 6degreessociety.com. It should be in a clickable link in the description wherever you're watching us at. Any closing thoughts, Emily, as we wrap up?
Have fun networking. Make it a game. Mm-hmm. If you can gamify it, I think life is that much more fun. So give yourself a personal goal of making one new connection or conversation a day and see where it leads you.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Well, that brings us to an end of yet another incredible episode of Her Talk Show. Thank you, Emily, for sharing your wisdom and inspiring us all. To our dedicated listeners, thank you for staying with us until the very end. Remember to follow, like, and share. Once again, I am your host, Sabrina Victoria, and I invite you to join our amazing community, Her Nation, where we continue to uplift each other with conversations like this